And the idea is that they will be sort of the new and improved, ever powerful frigates like nothing that they have now. And he actually said that they'll be the largest battleships in history. So the current largest battleship, I believe, is the USSR Gerald R. Ford, which is already in, obviously, the US Navy. And I think his plan is to sort of go above and beyond what they have now and replace some of the older ships that are currently in the US Navy. So I think it's the Arleigh Burke class, and bring in sort of this new fleet.
Ellie, thank you for doing this. Donald Trump has said the US has to have Greenland. What did he say?
Well, I mean, he was speaking actually about the new ships that he's announced for the US Navy, and someone sort of came in and asked him this question about what's happening in Greenland. And he sort of danced around it a bit and repeated some of the stuff he said before about how they need Greenland for national security. But obviously, the debate that it really comes back to is it about the minerals? Is it about the oil? It's a point of contention with the country. And there's been some tension between him and the leaders there over why he keeps talking about, the fact that the US needs Greenland for this national security. Sorry, but he did come back to saying ultimately we need Greenland for national security, not for minerals.
Yeah, so does that make sense, the reasoning? What's sort of the ultimate motivation behind it?
Well, I think it comes down to the geography, doesn't it? He wants to have this sort of cohesive kind of landmass that pulls Greenland in with the US, but it doesn't work that way. It's got its own sovereignty and its relationship with Denmark, and it's just not that simple. I think it's more complicated than that.
How realistic a prospect is it?
I don't know. I'm not sure I can speak to that. I wouldn't say that it's so realistic. I think that he talks a big game when it comes to this, but yeah, I don't know that it's that realistic, really.
Presumably then there are very tricky diplomatic relations between the US and Denmark right now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's appointed this special envoy. It doesn't seem that Greenland had any idea that that was coming. The reaction from Rasmus has not suggested that they knew it was coming. And they already have an ambassador. So it's a bit of a surprise, I imagine. And I think they are wondering, okay, so you've appointed this envoy who's based in the US. What does that mean? What's that role going to look like? They've described it as an escalation. It causes all sorts of diplomatic questions.
The other thing that Donald Trump was talking about, the main thing he was talking about yesterday, was his desire to increase the size of the US Navy. What did he announce?
So he's announced this new Trump class of warships, and he says that they are going to start with about 2, but they might go up to as many as 25. They're going to cost at least $5 billion each, and they're going to form part of this golden fleet. And the idea is that they will be sort of the new and improved, ever powerful frigates like nothing that they have now. And he actually said that they'll be the largest battleships in history. So the current largest battleship, I believe, is the USSR Gerald R. Ford, which is already in, obviously, the US Navy. And I think his plan is to sort of go above and beyond what they have now and replace some of the older ships that are currently in the US Navy. So I think it's the Arleigh Burke class, and bring in sort of this new fleet.
And what does he want them for?
Well, he talked a lot about his sign of strength through peace, when he announced them today, which is a sort of common theme that we see with him at the moment, particularly when it comes to foreign relations. But, there are lots of things going on with the US at the moment, with Venezuela. There's some conflict going on at sea there. And then you've also got China, who has been coming up and up and up in terms of their naval strength. They've actually overtaken the US now with the largest navy in the world, although it's not bigger in terms of sort of firepower and actual weight. But yeah, he's talking about a sign of strength there.
There's so many questions really about Donald Trump's motivations, particularly when we look at what's been happening over the last few weeks with Venezuela. Remind us of what's happened and why it is that Donald Trump, using his current Navy fleet, is squaring up to Venezuela.
Well, so you've got these tensions between Trump and Nicolas Maduro. He's not happy with Maduro's regime, and he said quite clearly that he would like to see that come to an end. But you've also got this sort of US campaign, Operation Southern Spear, against narco traffickers. So drugs coming into the US, they say a lot of them are coming from Venezuela, and they're targeting boats that they say are bringing those drugs into the United States, targeting them out at sea. And that has ramped up in recent weeks, and particularly in the last week or so, with their sort of renewed campaign against oil tankers specifically.
So it's quite difficult to drill down exactly into what is motivating Donald Trump, because I think there's sort of multi-layered reasons there.
Yeah, there are. And there's definitely a contentious relationship there between Maduro and Trump. So you've got the kind of personal political relationship there and the diplomatic sort of goings on. And then you've also got this campaign about drugs coming into the United States, which Trump has, you know, in his first term, he talked a lot about drugs coming into the US through its borders. And we know that he's hot on border control when it comes to things like immigration and stuff too. So he's very much sort of, he pays a lot of attention to what comes in and out of the country. And that does play a role in this, I think.
He said as part of that press conference yesterday that drug instances by water were down sort of really significantly. Is that true? And if it is, why?
I'm actually not sure about that one. I don't have the stats to hand. I think that he does often make statements about sort of things that are going up and down, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to pinpoint exactly where he's getting those numbers from. I would also caution that given the campaign against Venezuela is fairly recent, at least this sort of escalation, it would probably be quite hard to pinpoint those numbers just over the last few weeks. I think you'd have to look at it from a much bigger picture to get an idea of whether it's having a real concrete effect on the amount of drugs that are coming into the US.
Ellie, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And there's never been anything like these ships. These have been under... Welcome to Mar-a-Lago for this exciting announcement of the new Golden Fleet. We're calling it the Golden Fleet that we're building for the United States Navy. As you know, we're desperately in need of ships. Our ships are, some of them have gotten old and tired and obsolete, and we're going to go the exact opposite direction. These are bigger, but they will have 100 times the... You know, you used to build the Iowa, the Missouri, the Wisconsin, the Alabama, many others. We had big battleships. These are bigger, but they will have 100 times the, they'll be 100 times the force, the power, and there's never been anything like these ships. These have been under design consideration for a long time. Battleships are the largest, sturdiest, and most heavily armed. Battleships are the largest, sturdiest, and most heavily armed vessel built specifically for naval combat. While America has built many new warships over the years, they've tended to be smaller and much smaller, and not conducive to where we are and where we're going, and peace through strength. Specifically for naval combat. These cutting-edge vessels will be some of the most lethal surface warfare ships. They will be actually the most ever built other than our submarines. We have submarines which will have, in many ways, even more lethality, and we have many of them under construction. And not conducive to... And again, it's 100 times more powerful than the previous Iowa class, it's called. Those are the big ones that you'd see on a show. Victory at Sea. I don't know if anyone's seen Victory at Sea, but it was a classic. They'll help maintain American military supremacy, revive the American shipbuilding industry, and inspire fear in America's enemies all over the world. We want respect. We're going to have it. We already have it. We're more respected now than we ever were. But including, we envision that these two ships, we're talking about 10, but we're going to start with 2, and we're going to quickly morph into 10. And ultimately, we think it's going to be anywhere from 20 to 25 of these. But we're starting with the first 2 immediately, and we're going to then be very quickly involved with, I think, we're going to do another 8. And then we're going to ultimately, and pretty quickly, have a total of about 20 to 25. We'll make that determination. We're going to be upping that also. We're going to be going to I want to be very clear that we're building them here. We're working with others, but we're building them here. We have great Navy yards. We'll be negotiating with some of the companies that are running those yards, taking over the yards. From Theodore Roosevelt, the great. And next week I'm going to meet with the defense prime contractors. I'm going to meet with them here, Florida. And we're going to be talking about production schedules because they're too slow. We have many countries, allies, that are wanting to buy. We make the greatest equipment in the world, by far. Nobody's even close, but they don't produce them fast enough. So we're going to be meeting with them to talk about the production schedules. We're going to have strong production schedules. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is to build new plants. Even with the F-35, we have many people who want the F-35 fighter jet. We're at least 15 years advanced ahead of. We're going to be discussing CapEx spending. We'll be discussing the pay to executives where they're making $45 and $50 million a year and not being able to build quickly. They're going to make that kind of money. They have to build quickly. Again, we make the best equipment in the world, but they don't make them fast enough. And we're going to be also discussing dividends. We want the dividends to go into the creation of production facilities. So we'll be talking about all CapEx, dividends, and the pay. We're also going to be talking about buybacks. They spend so much money on buybacks. They want to buy back their stock. I don't want them to buy back their stock. I want them to put the money in plant and equipment so they can build these planes fast, rapidly. Submarine development, most powerful, that's right, the most powerful. So we don't want to have executives making $50 million a year, issuing big dividends to everybody, and also doing buybacks. And then they say, well, we don't have the money to build a plant. They got to build plants. Plants to make F-35s, plants to make helicopters, plans to make the F-47 new jet, and that's it. And that's what I'm going to be talking to them about. They're going to start spending money on building airplanes and ships and the things that we need, not in 10 years and 15 years. We need them now. Undetectable. So we're also building right now 3 large aircraft carriers in addition to the ones we have. Rearmed just in terms of guns and missiles at the highest level. And we're going to be working very hard with companies, but we're also going to be penalizing companies that aren't doing a good job. Of hypersonic weapons, many hypersonic weapons. These ships are made of steel as opposed to aluminum. It's a big difference, as you know. Battleships, the great battleships, had 6- and 7-inch steel hulls, and these are going to be likewise made out of very powerful steel. Our steel industry is coming back very strongly, by the way. It's coming back at record numbers, and we're going to be using them for the steel, but electric rail guns and even the high-powered